Hey, welcome to the second part of Dumb Bleep of the Week. Let's get to number 8. This is responding to a news item about Ford. Ford is writing down $19.5 billion in EV investments. Ford also says it will stop producing the electric version of the F-150. It turns out when these people aren't getting subsidized as much by the government, or there's not as big of a future for those subsidies, they're like, you know what, this EV thing just ain't working out. Or we haven't found a way to make it profitable. They still haven't found a way to make it profitable. This doesn't really have anything to do with this dumb, but I just want to make that point as well. They never found a way to make it profitable, and they didn't really have to. They're just going to rely on the government to make up whatever the difference was because the government was going to mandate everyone to buy their cars, their EVs. And so it was like a good future business model. And this will probably come back around sometime. We're not always going to have a Republican in charge. Interestingly enough, other companies who only focused on EVs, they found ways for them to be profitable eventually. But regardless, this person called Neat, with a picture of a particular frog in their profile photo, says, "Good. Henry Ford made the 40-hour work week mainstream. Ford deserves worse, even worse than this." Now, this is dumb, but maybe not everyone knows why. He did make the 40-hour work week mainstream. He did, because the mainstream work week prior to that was between like 70 and 100 hours, like all the hours. It was like all the hours and all the days was the mainstream before that. And the mainstream, like even in his factories to start with, the case. They didn't just immediately come out and do a 40-hour work week. Turns out, you had to make sure your business was going pretty well before you made massive structural changes like that like no one was doing. Okay. So yes, and people made this person aware, and then they issued a, of course that's not what I meant, reply later on. September 25th, Charlie's birthday, 1926, Henry Ford announces 8-hour workday and 5-day work week. September 25th, 1926, Henry Ford announced the introduction of 8-hour workday, 5-day work week. This decision marked a significant departure from the prevailing work practices and signaled a commitment to improved working conditions. Also, like, doubled the wages, what was normal for everyone getting paid, which I think was $270. Yeah, it was $270, and all of a sudden they're like, I mean, imagine this. You're in the world, you're getting paid $270 a day, and you're working like 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And all of a sudden they're like, all right, we're going to do 8-hour days. We're going to do it 5 days a week. And we're going to pay you $5 an hour. Imagine the life change that is. That's a pretty big life change. Okay. Let's see. I think I just said everything that's in this paragraph right here. Yeah, overall it's a good thing. It was a competitive move. Trying to attract workers. Wasn't the only, at this point, was not the only car company that existed, and not the only factory that existed where people could go work that kind of job. So it needed to be competitive and clearly started to outcompete everyone. Unions were becoming more powerful at that time too. This was not like a forced union agreement or whatever, but sure, they were putting some pressure as well. And so at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I'm just going to be the best. Just going to be the best option for all these people. And I think it worked pretty well overall. I mean, Ford kind of sucks these days, but what are you going to do? This person says, to clarify, here's what they're actually mad about. They're mad because, yes, 40 hours a week was an improvement for assembly line workers in the 1900s, but as productivity increased, hours remain the same. Most people still work 40 hours a week over 100 years later. Timesheets, supervisors, KPIs, background checks, all of these are downstream from Ford. So it's Ford's fault for cutting everyone's hours in half, being like the first major people to jump on that. Like, you're mad that we're still in that? Like, it's Ford's fault that the companies are still doing 40-hour work weeks right now? Like, that's a Ford policy? Like my wife's company, they look in their bylaws and they're like, well, it says here, Henry Ford said 40 hours a week. And so then they vote on it, and that's what they do. Because remember Henry Ford? They got a picture of him up in the hospital. That's why they're going to do 40 hours a week. Okay, so yeah, that's really dumb. And by the way, I didn't know this. Turns out Ford might have been like a little bit of a better businessman and boss, one of those nice capitalists, than people really know. I didn't know this whole Dodge versus Ford Motor Company thing even happened. I saw it was pointed out. I didn't know this thing happened. So he decided, because they were just swimming in money, they were doing really well. They had all the workers and everyone was happy. And they had a whole bunch of extra money laying around. And he was like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to reduce the hours further. And we're going to reduce the price of our cars further. And we're going to pay people more. And it turns out some shareholders of Ford, last name Dodge, came out and said, nope, that is wrong. We want our special dividends from all of this extra money. And it's your job, because we're the shareholders of this company, to maximize the shareholder value. And so they went all the way to court about it. Now, rest assured, if they would not have taken this to court eventually, they would have had an antitrust case against them for having a monopoly, for lowering the prices on their cars and paying their workers too much money, and just other people not being able to compete. So that would have happened as well. The courts were going to come for them eventually. He was like, I'm going to pay people more, going to reduce the cost of the cars because we got all this extra money in the bank. And actual shareholders sued them and said, no, we want dividends. It formed sort of a precedent. People look back on it as like, this is why companies must maximize shareholder value. And in fact, there's no like legal binding thing for that, because it's so hard to prove. You could have easily made the case that this will maximize, this is going to help us grow the company. We're going to have much happier workers, and we're going to do way more business. We're going to sell way more cars, and the company is going to be, 100 times bigger than it is this year. And this is a way to maximize shareholder value long term. But anyhow, just a little interesting tidbit. So that's number 8. Someone mad at Ford for reducing people's work hours, because 100 years later, we still have the same work hours. And I blame Ford for that. That's great. Yeah. Number 9. What are we talking about now? Oh, this is some stuff about Elon. Billionaires, capitalism. But this one starts off with Doge. This is from this page we've had on many times for Dumb Bleep. Happy they join us so often. Evan Loves Wharf says, the craziest thing that I cannot get over is that Elon has caused 600,000 deaths with a projected 14 million deaths over the next 5 years because of his USAID cuts. That's more deaths than the Holocaust. Yet he still gets to walk around. So, couple things here. This is a Elon is Hitler thing, but in this case, Elon is worse than Hitler, because projected 14 million deaths over the next 5 years. So he's worse than Hitler. And the thing that made him worse than Hitler is that he won't take, still getting taken from you. Just stay with me here. He won't threaten you with prison so he can take your money out of your paycheck. Actually, before it ever even hits your bank account. Scrape some of it off for the administration and stuff like that. And then take that money from the American taxpayers and send it to other people in some other random country that you're never going to go to, ever. You're never going to meet the people. And I don't mean anything bad by this. The people, it's not really going to ever affect anything that you do throughout your life, probably. Probably not. Actually, the only effect is that you had less money. And that makes him worse than Hitler, because these people are going to die. Now, this is based on some faulty some faulty math. I don't know if we ever went through it specifically, but they did the typical thing. USAID says, here's how many people we save per year. Actually, they go to the NGOs that they fund, and the NGOs are like, yeah, here's how many people we save per year. We're pretty sure that this many people would have died if you guys would not have given us this amount of money, and we would not have spent it so perfectly over this amount of time. So this is how many people we've saved. Maybe they can give you like a 10-year figure. Look how long we've been doing this. This is how many people would have died if you wouldn't have given us this money. And then USAID is like, we totally trust you, mainly because you were collecting everyone's information and turning some people for the CIA, getting some assets over there, helping us overthrow some governments. And so we're going to trust you guys with this information and keep sending the money. And then when people go and they say, well, we cut back some of this money, or we cut back this program, they go back and they look and they say, well, that's how many people they projected they were saving. Okay. And so since we are not directly giving this money to the federal government, and then through USAID, and then through these 20 different NGOs, then those people are going to die. And so we have created a number, and this is how many. And they'll even do this even though they're all projections. You don't know. They'll even do it and say, this is how many people have died so far, using like the averages. And here's, well, if it's this many for 10 years, then it's this many per year. So it's this many per month, this many people a day, an hour, a minute. And here's Elon Musk killing someone every minute. He must be stopped. It's kind of thing. It's kind of thing that they do. Then the number's just fugazi. Okay. But then the even dumber thing on top of this, before I move on, because I got like 8 more things inside of Dumb Bleep number 9. If you're to be held responsible morally because you didn't want to send this person's money to that company who gave it to this person who then used some of it for this person, allegedly. If you're to be held morally responsible for that, then why don't we hold people still more responsible for not sending even more money over to people? Do you know how many millions of people die every year from things that were preventable? And do you know how much richer everyone in America is compared to all of those people on the continent of Africa? So how is it that until you have equalized everyone's income and everyone's wealth to stop those people from dying, that you cannot be held morally responsible? In fact, you don't even have to send it through the government. You could be sending it through charities right now who say that they are going to save these people's lives. You could do it right now. Are you going to send $10? You going to send $1 a day? You going to set that schedule and pay it every single month? Or are you going to send 10? That's good. But guess what? 20 would have saved 5 more people's lives. You murderer. Do you guys understand how stupid this is? It's not your responsibility to take care of everyone else in the world. And if you're going to say that cutting off that amount of money is the reason that these people died right here, you're saying that somehow there is a responsibility for us to all do that. And if there's a responsibility, where does that stop? With the amount we were paying in 2024? Because it could have been more than that. And you could be doing it too. You dumbass. All right, next thing on here. Oh, we still got Elon. Okay. This is from Blade of the Sun. Commie page. Okay. This person says, Elon Musk is worth nothing. He has stolen $600 billion from his workers, who he treats more like slaves, while he sits on Twitter posting lies. I don't know about that. Actually, the average wages for people at Tesla are pretty darn good. Better than the other car companies, but he treats them like slaves. That's a good one. By the way, I don't really care so much about the Elon Musk aspect of this, but he is the richest guy in the world, and all of these are sort of a proxy for just talking about capitalism. And so that's why we're talking so much about Elon Musk right now. Oh, I am a fan of Elon Musk for the most part. Has stolen $600 billion from his workers. Now this, finally, we got a verified time that someone said this specifically, because I've mentioned this several times. Elon Musk is worth $600 billion. Actually, it's like $680 billion. Something like that. Today, depending on where Tesla stock is. So he has stolen that from his workers, right? And that should tell you these people are not serious. They're just plain ignorant. Maybe they're somewhat retarded. I don't really know. I don't know which one it is. That is not money that came in through Tesla's earnings, through Tesla's revenue that he has. I mean, imagine that. If you would think that the $600 billion he has came in from like their revenue or something, well, that must mean must have multi-trillions of dollars in revenue, because he wouldn't be taking like the whole thing. They got to have enough to keep everything afloat, pay some of the other people that are working there as well. You can actually look at a chart of their annual revenue, and you would find that in total, since Tesla was created, their revenue, this is not net, this ain't net, it's the total revenue. It's a total of $506 billion up through 2024. $506 billion. That's crazy, because Elon Musk is worth $680 billion today. So how does that happen? That's pretty crazy. To this day, this revenue does sound gross. You're right about that. This sounds really gross. That's very gross revenue of about $506 billion. And to this day, their net income, about $38 billion off of that money. Like cumulative since the company was started to now. It's about $38 billion that they've made. They lost money for years and years. The first time they actually made money and didn't lose money was in 2021, which is nuts. And he's worth $680 billion because other people are buying in to have ownership of the company. I got Tesla shares. Maybe some of you people listening right now have Tesla shares. There was a point in time a couple of years ago where it was before the market opened, and I saw it tanking like crazy. Got down to $101. So I bought some Tesla shares. I was like, that is a pretty good price right there. Hit it in the pre-market before the market opened. Today it's like $470 something like that. So I paid $101 for some shares. I also paid about $300 for some shares. I also paid just last week like $430 for some shares. Still. And so the real problem here is that I am willing to pay more, and a lot of other people like me am willing to pay more for those shares because I think the company is going to keep becoming more and more valuable. And what I just explained to you is why his wealth keeps going up, because it's just in shares of the company. All right, some bad math, and then we'll get off number 9, I swear. Melanie DiRigo on X said Elon Musk is so rich he could pay for tuition-free public college, universal child care, close the cap to fund universal school meals. Might be gap, could be cap, I don't know. Paid sick leave for everyone. He could end homelessness. He could end hunger. That'd be fine. I got hungry last night for a bit. I would like to never feel that ever again, honestly. So I would like to end hunger. That would be good. And he could do a UBI of $1,250 for every adult. And he'd still be a billionaire. Now, what was tricky here, I actually looked into the math on all this. The things that she just mentioned actually add up to $599 billion. And so on that day, his wealth was $600 billion. So he could do all those things, and he would still be a billionaire. There's a couple problems with that. What's the obvious problem? The one we've talked about so many times. He doesn't have that money in his bank account. He would have to sell his shares. And when he went to sell his shares of Tesla, Tesla would tank. Tesla would crash. Pun intended. So he would not be able to redeem the full $600 billion. I think if he were lucky and he were going to sell all of those shares, he might be lucky to end up having $300 billion, something like that. Probably less than that, actually. But regardless, let's say he could cash out all that. He redeems it, takes his coupons to the bank. He's like, all right. And then they're like, okay, here's $600 billion. This is for 1 year. That's another problem. That's 1 year. And so what you're saying is like, we should just crash this company, kill these jobs, prevent all these future innovations from happening, all the other things that Musk is going to create. We're going to destroy those companies so we can pay for all of these things for 1 year. And that's the richest person. Other problems as well. That's $600 billion. That is a less than a quarter, say 20% of the current U.S. deficit. We spend $7 trillion every year and apparently haven't been able to do these things. Crazy thing about how we haven't been able to do these things is that, pick ending homelessness. What did California spend on ending homelessness? $28 billion, I think. Somewhere between $20 and $30 billion over a course of so many years. You know what they ended up with? More homeless people than there were when they started spending the money to end homelessness. That's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy, right? Ending hunger, feeding everyone. They're going off and by the way, they're going off of these ridiculous numbers like, $6 billion could end hunger for like this meal right here. And there's another one. Got to keep eating. Okay. And by the way, the UBI would actually take up like the entire thing, but whatever. She's also, she thought it was important to note, from Canada. Her account is based in Canada, eh? So I think we shouldn't listen to anything that she's talking about. My God, this one keeps going. I'm going to do this one another 2 minutes. Got to put a timer on number 9 here. Good Lord. This is a whole show. Number 9's a whole show. Popular meme going around. Anytime I see a meme like this and it's got like 2 million views on it, I reckon there ought to be a response. The response in the community notes was not very good, so I figured I would give a response. Okay. This meme is from We Are the Millers. You guys have seen that before, where it's Jason Sudeikis and Jennifer Aniston and whoever those two people's names are. And it says, Sweden, we tax our billionaires at 55%. Netherlands, we tax our billionaires at 49.5%. Germany, we tax ours at 47%. United States, you tax your billionaires? And this person says, it's time to figure it the F out, America. And you get millions of views when you post something so stupid. Actually, the dumber the thing is that you post, the less factual it is, the better it does on X. I'm sorry. You want to know why? Because people get on there to correct it, and that creates more engagement on the post, which tells the algorithm that there's a lot of engagement on the post, and it does really, really well because that's happening. People repost it so they can point out how dumb it is, and it does really well. But whatever. There's a problem with this meme. There's a big problem. Neither Sweden, the Netherlands, or Germany have a wealth tax. In fact, they have had wealth taxes. They ended their wealth taxes because they lost all the wealthy people. All right? So that's a big thing right there. There's already like a major lie right here that they are not wealth taxing their billionaires. Now, the crazier part about this is when you look up the stats like Sweden 55%, Netherlands 49%, Germany 47%, those numbers are the top marginal tax rates for everyone. So you say, we tax our billionaires at 55% or at 47%. Well, in that case, we also tax our billionaires. The number's 37 or 38%. I don't remember exactly what the top marginal tax rate is. Plus the states have taxes on top of that. All the other things, but say, yeah, top marginal tax rate. So we do have that. But then the crazier thing, and all these people who talk about these other, this is the kind of socialism I'm talking about, the kind of democratic socialism I'm talking about. Like in Sweden, that 55% tax rate kicks in at $82,000 a year. $82,000 a year. Rest of that, you're paying the top marginal tax rate. Is that something people want here in America? To emulate these perfect democratic socialist countries, as they call them? No, it's not. It's obviously not what they want at all. They want the outcomes of Sweden without actually having the policies that have gotten some of those outcomes in their little tiny country of 7 million people, or however many it is. All right. They would not support those policies. There's something crazy about those policies. Like, we want things to be fair. And so when you're making $10 million, we say you got to pay a higher tax rate than this poor person who's in the middle class. And so we make it really fair. They call it a progressive tax rate. And then we separate those rich people off and we say, you got to pay this higher tax rate on all that money. People would not stand for the kind of tax rates they have in these other countries at all. What they're saying is, yeah, middle class guy, middle class girl, richest guy in the nation, we reckon y'all ought to pay the same income tax, top marginal tax rate on your income. That's what we think is fair. What that's actually happened is that's why they can provide some of the programs that they have over there. People here would never go for it. Okay. Good God, that was number 9. Let's move on to this real socialist company. We'll listen to her talk. I'll destroy it in about 10 seconds, and then we'll move on.
When I started my company, I told the world via social media that I would be running it on a unique leftist business model based on communist conflict theory. The entire model was based in this idea of collectivism. I said we would have collective decision-making, unlimited paid time off, full range benefits for the entire team, equalized profit share, equalized wages, which means everyone, including myself, makes the same wage. And you know what the internet did? They laughed at me. They told me it would fail. They told me people were too greedy. They told me it would never work. It would never scale. They told me to come back after we've been in business a year. And then when we hit a year, they said 2 years, then 3 years, then 5 years. We are now entering our 6th year. And I want to share some stats with you. In the first 5 years of business, we had 8 figures in gross revenue. This means we scaled quickly. In that time, while we scaled, we accrued debt. We are now completely debt-free. We have a full-time staff here. We have below average turnover rates because we actually invest in our team members. Just this year alone, me and my entire team got a 17% raise and just over $5,000 in bonuses. People do not abuse the unlimited paid time off. In fact, it is mandatory that they take at least 3 months. Not months, weeks off annually, so they accrue at 6%. We have an above average return customer rate because the...
All right, that's enough. The point there is that her business is apparently doing very well, and that's fine. I'm happy for her that it's going really well. I'm glad that she's allowed to do that, and she is allowed to do that. Any people who start that business are allowed to do that if they want to. That is okay for them to do. I did want to point out she boasts about the paid time off. People accrue at 6%. I know this might not be normal, but my wife works for a super evil capitalist company, and she accrues at 12%. It's pretty crazy, actually. She gets more than a day off every pay period. It's pretty cool, actually. She's always got just tons of paid time off. It's ridiculous. This person says, here's an actual socialist business. How long before the capitalist bootlickers rename and sanitize it as communal capitalism, conscious capitalism, or teamwork capitalism, anything but socialism? So if you call this anything but socialism, it's just you coping. That's it. And actually, it just means that she gets to own it. And by the way, gets to decide how they're going to decide, how they divide out their profits, how they make their decisions, all kinds of things like that. And that's okay. But you know what? You know how you know it's not? You know how you know it's not a socialist thing? 1 second into the video, when I started my company. 1 second in. Okay. Not socialist. Next thing, number 11. This person says, is it fair to say that Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson have blood from Bondi Beach on their hands? I'm afraid it is fair. If you don't think so, please read this from Naomi Wolf. Lord have mercy. So yes, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson caused this Islamic extremist terrorist attack against Jews that were celebrating the first day of Hanukkah. My response to this was, yes. Islamists have long drawn their hatred for Israel from the teachings of Candace and Carlson. It is taught in the Book of X. It's a good way of just making fun of how stupid that is. You guys understand how stupid that is. And going back to the Bondi thing real quick, the Telegraph posted out an article here. The Sydney terror attack may have been carried out by Iranian-backed foreign terror cell, Israeli authorities believe. That was quick. It's quick for them to jump on. And so who's really, I don't want to say who's really to blame here. You know what doesn't help, though? I watched some of the clips from TPUSA and stuff last night, and you know what doesn't help with this problem of alleged anti-Semitism? Most of what they mean is just people who don't like Israel or who disagree with Israel's foreign policy or policy as it relates to Palestinians. What doesn't help of people here in America are the kind of things that we see happening in the halls of power. The real people with real power. And so you guys probably saw some clips like this. I'm just saying it doesn't help. Now, the one good thing, this is a clip of Trump talking at whatever the gathering was. Maybe it had something to do with Hanukkah. I don't know what they were celebrating. The clip with Mark Levin, the clip with Mary Matelson. You guys have probably seen those things. I'll play a little bit of it. Here we go.
Come up here, Miriam. Miriam gave my campaign indirectly and directly $250 million. She was number one. When somebody can give you $250 million, I think that we should give her the opportunity to say hello. And Miriam, make it quick, because $250 million is not what it used to be. Okay? Hello, darling. Come on.
That's funny. That's a funny joke.
Incredible woman with a great husband, a man that loved Israel.
Well,
oh, man. Thomas Massey got in trouble for saying that this was an Israeli that was donating to the person running against him. But this is an American from frickin' Nebraska or something like that. I don't know.
Mr. President, when you were in the Israeli parliament and you gave a speech and you saw me from far away, you called, and at that time I came with a scooter to the parliament just to hear you. I wanted to hear you alive. And
they go on to say that she was talking to Alan Dershowitz, and they think Trump ought to go ahead and go for a third term. And he says, yeah, I'll do it for another $250 million. Okay, just saying that kind of stuff doesn't help. Mark Levin also doesn't help here. These things are not helpful situation.
And I said, this is our first Jewish president. Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
That's right. Bad things happened on the second one. Namely, the election was rigged. And we found out. And
all right. So you guys get the thing. You know, I'll give you something positive though about this as it relates to Trump. It's right out in the open. You know, I don't think this is like the most corrupt administration that's ever existed in the history of America, like some people would say. I think Trump just does everything right on out there in the open. He brags about it. He's proud of it. Thinks it's awesome. And that's really what I see. And in a way, it's good. It's good to see those kinds of things. You think, you know, whatever kind of corruption or buying favor for Israeli politics or whatever you think is happening in this scenario, you think this hasn't always been the case, not just with Israel, but with all sorts of other countries and companies and people all around the world? Of course it has. Trump is what Dave Chappelle called an honest liar. And in this case, he's not even lying, really. He's just honest about it. Okay, that's number 11. I just had to skip through that real quick. Number 12, I did a video about this already. We already talked about it earlier in the week. It concerns the NDAA, which the Senate did pass since I did the episode. One of the points I made is that according to polls, about 90% of the people polled say that we should either decrease our military spending or keep it the same. That's, of course, not what the NDAA did. It increased military spending. Didn't just increase it, increased it by more than what the military itself was actually asking for, forced the military to keep programs that the military itself was planning on retiring, ridiculous things like that. But one of the more ridiculous things is that it prevents Trump from moving troops in Europe or removing troops from Europe or giving back bases to countries in Europe. On top of that, it prevents him from doing that without consulting NATO. So that's pretty crazy. And you know, one thing I didn't talk too much about on the previous episode this week was they released this thing in November 2025, the Trump administration did, called National Security Strategy. And the Europe part of it said that they wanted to enable Europe to stand on its own feet and operate as a group of aligned sovereign nations, including by taking primary responsibility for its own defense without being dominated by any adversarial power. Later on, they say they want to end the perception and prevent the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. And so in the NDAA, they go ahead and tell Trump that he cannot move, that not that he can't do it, specifically that they can't use any of this money to do it because Congress has got the purse strings. And so there is a prohibition on the use of funds that are authorized in the National Defense Authorization Bill. You can't reduce the forces below 76,000. You can't return a host country any site on the real property inventory of the United States European Command. Divest, redeploy, withdraw, or otherwise permanently move out of the area of responsibility of the U.S. European Command. And you can't move any equipment, I think, that's worth more than $500,000 was the other part of it. Unless it is in the national security interests of the United States and, not or, and is being undertaken only after appropriate consultations with all North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies and relevant non-NATO partners. That's awesome. How do people support this? How did Trump not go off about this? He's got one guy out there talking about how ridiculous it is for Congress to strip an obvious power away from the commander-in-chief. And it's Rand Paul that's out there saying this is unconstitutional. Of course, the president can move troops around. Of course, he can pull people back from military bases if he wants to. We flipped the whole thing on its head. Like, you can go in and have fights with anyone. You can bomb anyone. You can send troops into places. And Congress is like, I don't want to talk about it. I'd rather not put my name on this. But then when you're like, I think we should take people out of these bases. Congress is like, no, you can't do that. That's crazy. That could be dangerous. That could be very dangerous. I won't read the entire thing about, this is number 13, the Venezuela thing. I'll just go to one dumb. I'm not going to go about the whole narco-terrorists and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to do one part of the dumb. And that is all the talk about Venezuela's oil that all of a sudden popped up. As, yes, admittedly, many of us, not just me, admit it, you did too, assumed that Trump was going to be announcing that we were going to go to war with Venezuela. Instead, we're just going to bomb boats and seize tankers. We're not going to go to war. And so that's good. He starts talking about until such time, they're talking about the blockade, until such time as they return to the United States of America all the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. The regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves. No matter what you think about the seizure of businesses or property, leases, oil rights, anything like that occurred in 1976 and that occurred in 2007 in Venezuela, first off, those companies were paid off, not as much as they asked for, but they were paid off. 1.6 for one, 1.8 billion with a B to the other because of what happened. So they were kind of paid back for their assets that they had that were taken by the Venezuelan government. Okay. This is, how can we possibly have a right to this oil? It's literally like why did they put their country on top of America's oil? This would not have happened if Venezuela would not have selfishly placed their country on top of our oil. It was their fault. And you remember that's what this all traces back to, of course. I will play the, let me find Venezuela. There is, no, that's the WMDs. Talked about that. No, that's someone talking about the War Powers Resolution. That's another War Powers Resolution. Here's the thing about the oil. Right fast. There we go.
Yeah, what was that?
Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had, they took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching. But they're not going to do that. We want it back. They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it back.
That's not a justification for anything. It's not his only justification. This clip was presented as like the question was, why do you want to go to war with Venezuela? And he said they took our oil. That's not the question. It was a clarification question about what did you mean in that truth post about the oil rights and stuff like that. Just to be clear, okay? It's not our oil. and we had rights, like technically the companies had signed rights to do things in that area, and then that country revoked those rights. In the same way that our country could revoke the rights of other countries' companies doing work here in America. If we revoked the rights of, say, a bunch of Chinese companies that were doing work here in America and said, well, we're allowing you to do it now, but it turns out just going to shove you guys out. We're actually going to take the factories. You guys all need to go home. See you later. So when China is talking about, well, here's why we got to start bombing America, I'm like, well, they took our sneaker rights that we had in Oregon. Like, no, no one would take that. No one would take that as an excuse at all. And it's that dumb. Truly is. I'm going to skip over all the other stuff because last thing we'll talk about, the post about Ross Ulbricht. This will be an easy one, quick one to go over. So because of, this was stemmed from Trump classifying fentanyl as a WMD. That's when this first post happened. It was posted out by the Governor Newsom press office. Trump also pardoned, pretty big narco trafficker from Honduras, I think was the country. And so people pointed out, well, he also pardoned this guy, Ross Ulbricht. Like Governor Newsom press office said, founder of the Silk Road dark web marketplace. That's the whole thing right there. You don't need any other information. That's what he got in trouble for. None of the other things that are about to be said are important. He founded a marketplace that allowed people to buy and sell things. They could pay each other with Bitcoin or whatever it is they're using to do transactions. And there it is. There's the problem. But the rest of it says, which facilitated over $214 million in illegal drug sales. And this is Governor Newsom's press office, so probably the thing that they really care about is that it didn't come with like Narcan and clean needles and stuff like that for people, just to keep people safe. That's probably the crime that he committed in California. No taxes. That's the problem, really. Some of those drugs killed people. Trump pardoned him anyway. It's true that happened. People bought and sold drugs on there. Probably some of those drugs killed people. It's potential. I don't have any direct record of that, but yeah, let's say that happened. Okay. Someone else said Trump pardoned Ross Ulbricht, who was given a life sentence, double life sentence, actually, pretty sure, for trafficking fentanyl to the U.S. Cut the bleep. That's talking about the WMDs. These are all pretty big posts here. Ross Ulbricht was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. He was a founder of Silk Road, which sold millions of dollars of illegal drugs, including fentanyl, which Trump has deemed a weapon of mass destruction. Trump pardoned him anyway. Well, to be fair, he had not deemed it a weapon of mass destruction at the time he pardoned Ross. So, I don't know. The main point I made on this and a comment that ended up getting a lot of likes and stuff on it, even though the grammar in the post was questionable, but sometimes that helps. Was how many people probably still right now purchase drugs on Facebook Marketplace or purchase drugs on Craigslist. Is Craigslist still a thing? I'm not really sure. How many people use government roads to transport those things? How many people use government fiat? How many people using that government currency to do these things? Probably a lot. Cash, government money, or treasury bills are facilitating drug transactions right now as we speak. I think the U.S. Treasury is at fault, pretty sure. People have bought and sold drugs on Facebook Marketplace for sure, and other things. There's some super questionable posts on there. I don't think that girl is trying to sell me that tank top. I do not think that that's what's happening in this photo. A lot of things happen on there. You put Mark Zuckerberg in prison. Not for that, probably for some other stuff, but not for that. That's not his fault, right? Totally ridiculous. And I must point out, this, of course, happened because, Trump came and spoke at the Libertarian Convention. And that was what libertarians asked for as a thank you for that. That was, hey, what's something that I could tell libertarians I'm going to do? It's not a quid pro quo kind of thing. There's no real transaction here. It's like, hey, what's something I could tell libertarians I'm going to do that they will like? And then people just booed at him the entire time until he's like, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht. And everyone cheered. And then guess what? He said day one, that liar did it on day two, but to make up for it, it was a full unconditional pardon, and that's awesome. Ross is free. There's still a lot of other people that need to get free. Guys, let's get the votes in on this crazy dumb bleep. Let me go back through and tell you what the options were, if you don't remember, because it's been a while. Number one, Kamala and the Epstein files. Of course, they didn't release those because they didn't want to tell the DOJ what to do. They wanted to, of course, but they didn't want to tell the DOJ what to do. So it was their DOJ's fault, actually. Number two, those cars are too easy to steal. Kias and Hyundai. Number three, all the conversation about guns. Talked about a lot of stuff about guns. Prisons are safe. Okay, there's dangerous people in prison, but they're safe because we keep guns out of prison. We know that. And Steve Kerr was in there. And that, can't forget that crazy person who's like, I feel childish when I say this. And then they went on to say something that a childish should be like, all right, dude, come on. Don't be ridiculous. Okay. Are you slow? That's what a kid would say these days. Number four, people trying to make the hero not what the hero was because they didn't like what the hero was at Bondi Beach. Number five, the nun versus the Muslim meme. Number six, those, I called it dummies versus Spike. Number seven, the Disney conversation. I don't know specifically what the dumb was. I just found it to be an interesting conversation. And also, can we just not lose, there's no reason to do this. There was a hell of a lot of money printing that happened in 2020. Trump was the president. Okay. That happened. Ton of money. 40% gain in the money supply. Boom. Like that. You got to attribute some of that inflation to Trump. I'm just saying, of course you do. Of course you do. And the government's policies to pay people back for shutting them down. Let's see here. Where were we at? Number 8 was the Ford conversation. The guy was mad at Henry Ford for doing the 40-hour work week. Number 9, and we had a lot of socialist stuff versus Elon. We know that. Number 10, that actual socialist business. First, second, she says, when I started my business, which is not owned by the workers because it's hers. Number 11, the Israel stuff. I didn't spend a lot of time on that, but number 12, the NDAA and the NATO thing. Number 13, Venezuela sat their country on our oil. Number 14, all the stuff about Ross. While we are getting the votes in, everyone get your votes in, okay? Let me tell you all to go to joingml.com if you want to be involved in the voting process right now. There's still time, not today for this one, but there's still time for you to be involved in voting for Dumb Bleep of the Year. So go to joingml.com for as little as $7 a month. You can pay more if you want. $7 is the minimum. That has not increased with inflation, okay? What else we got? Go to YouTube, leave a comment on the YouTube video. If you're watching on YouTube right now, then hit like and comment and make sure you subscribe. And ring the bell. I don't know, people always say that in their YouTube videos. I guess there's a bell. I don't know. If you guys see a bell anywhere on this page right now, click on it. I don't know what it does, but it seems important enough for people to put it in their videos. I'm really great at this whole YouTube thing, being a show host thing for sure. All right, where are we at on the votes? It looks like it's going to be the guns. It looks like it's going to be the guns conversation. And so we had Steve Kerr. We had talking about the guns in the prisons. And then we had that crazy left-wing nut job giving us the, there's just, People will say it's impossible that we could just take every single gun in America and melt them down and then there wouldn't be any guns, but it's entirely possible. Have you guys thought about the fact that that is entirely possible? Because people keep saying it's not, and I actually just thought about it, and it's entirely possible. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I greatly appreciate it. Will not be here next week. Did the whole week by myself. Not going to be here next week. It's Christmas week. I decided I'm going to spend more time off for this so I don't feel so rushed. But we will be back the following week before New Year's to make sure we go through Don't Bleep of the year. So everyone have a wonderful Christmas. Or if there's like a couple people who just got offended, why are you here? What are you still doing here right now? Seriously, you made it all the way here and you just got offended because I said Christmas? Happy Holy Days. You know, it exists. There's other. Watch your holiday movies, everyone. Everyone list your favorite Hanukkah movie out there. Tell me what it is. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Greatly appreciate it. We will do a year-end wrap-up the week after Christmas. Be careful traveling if you're traveling. It's just, roads are going to be busy. It could be icy or rainy or cold or whatever where you're going. Just pay attention. Nothing on your phone is important enough to risk running off the road or running into someone else. Nothing on your phone is that important, so don't look at it. Pay attention. Hands at 10 and 2. Wear your seatbelt like the insurance company wants you to do. Just do all those things. And if you do every single thing that I just said to do, and I mean every single one of them, they'll be back here again after the holidays. Until then, have a good Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.